Learning how to be graceful in social situations has been a key part of my professional success, but it did not come naturally to me. In this video, I'm going to talk about how I went from hiding in a bathroom stall at a gala to mingling comfortably with strangers at parties, industry events, weddings, and other unstructured social situations. I can't remember ever not being introverted and socially awkward, but in 2009, after an enraging experience at a charity ball, I made the decision to defeat my social anxiety and awkwardness. So I decided that day I was gonna do something about it. And man, the thing I did was dumb. I decided I was gonna try exposure therapy, and I was just going to go to as many social situations as I could and just become numb to it, I guess. I don't know. It was a really bad idea. But I signed up for meetup.com and I went to all of these different meetups, and every single time I failed. Either I would show up and not be able to talk to anyone and would just like make a circle around the place and leave and go back home, or I would get in a conversation and say or do something awkward that I ended up regretting. And every single time I did this, it seemed like my social anxiety was compounding. Like every failure made me more afraid to fail. And if you think about it, it makes sense that that kind of approach wouldn't work. I wasn't choosing those events with any strategy, I wasn't preparing for them in any particular way, and I hadn't really spent any time thinking about why I was so afraid and trying to deal with that. And so I decided that that is what I was going to do going forward. And that is what actually worked. So here's what I did to defeat my social anxiety for good, step by step. The first thing that I did was start identifying and unpacking the traumas and memories and moments that have built up to create my social anxiety. I didn't wake up one morning with social anxiety. It built up over time through experiences that I had. So I spent some time really figuring out what those were and why they stuck with me so badly. When I reflected on my history, I realized that I had a lot of built up pain from crappy experiences that I'd had with people who treated me badly. I grew up in a very affluent area that was primarily white, but I was neither white nor affluent. So in elementary school, I experienced a lot of race-based bullying and a lot of bullying that was based on me being in a different economic status. And so even into adulthood, I always had this fear that something bad was going to happen or people were going to treat me badly because I was Black or because I wasn't on the same economic plane as they were. And that made me really self-conscious and worried even into adulthood. Another thing that followed me into adulthood was the multitude of bad friendships that I experienced in middle school, high school, and even into early adulthood when I was in the military and when I was in college. I ended up with a lot of lopsided friendships where I worked really, really, really hard for the relationship, but didn't really get very much reciprocated. And also a lot of friendships that were actually quite duplicitous. And those betrayals really built up and made me afraid that the connections that I was making in the present were fake connections that were eventually going to end in betrayal. The thing that helped me get past all of that pain from those people who had hurt me in my past was actually taking some time to find empathy for them. When I really thought through what their rationale could be and how they could come to the conclusion that treating me that way was okay or a good thing to do, it helped me reframe those experiences so that they were about that person's limitations, not about something about me that was bad or wrong. It really helped me figure out that in the present, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. There are going to be people who might be cruel, that might be mean, that might have intentions that aren't pure, and that's okay. That's about them. That's not about me. As much as I would have loved to lay all the blame for my social anxiety on all the people who had been mean to me over the course of my life, the truth is it was important for me to also look in the mirror. There were definitely times when I just did something wrong, or I did something embarrassing or inappropriate or awkward, and there were lessons in that too. And that was the next thing that I really spent some time breaking down. The next thing that I did was spent some time reflecting on the specific fears that I had going into a social situation. And I found that they fell into two easy categories: things I had control over and things I didn't have control over. I couldn't control whether something embarrassing was going to happen. I couldn't control if someone was going to say or do something that was mean. And I couldn't control whether something bad was going to happen that would follow me into the future. But those were all things that I was afraid about that was contributing to my anxiety. And so I had to be honest and straight with myself. I had no control over those things. Spending energy worrying about them had absolutely no impact on whether they would happen. And just committing to the fact that if they did happen, I would deal with them at that time and try to have some faith in myself that I would be able to do that well. Then came the hard part, doing something about the fears that were within my control. So I was afraid that my appearance wouldn't be good enough. I was afraid that I would say or do something stupid or awkward. I was also afraid that I would either create or get stuck in an awkward situation. And those are all things that are completely within my control. As much as we would love to live in a society where appearances don't matter, the truth is they do. When people meet you for the first time, they're making judgments based on the way that you're presenting yourself. And so I really put some thought and effort into making sure that my appearance was sending the message that I wanted to send and was appropriate for the context that I was operating in. I didn't have a very extensive wardrobe, and so I had to make some investments in making sure that my wardrobe would allow me to put together outfits that sent the kind of message that I wanted to send. And then doing some research ahead of time to try to figure out what the appropriate dress code is for a particular event or a particular venue. I find it really useful if I'm going somewhere that I've never been to try to do a Google image search to see if that event has any public pictures or if that venue has any public pictures, or even ask the organizer what the dress code is. I would much rather have that information and be able to make an informed decision about what I'm gonna wear and feel confident about my outfit than to sort of wing it and end up showing up and being overdressed or underdressed. The fear of not knowing what to say is probably the most common and most intense fear that people who are socially awkward or socially anxious have. And actually, this is probably the easiest one to figure out. Why? Because when strangers are meeting each other for the first time, they pretty much always have the exact same conversation. And it's always asking questions about demographics. Where are you from? How did you get here? How do you know the host? Where do you live? Where did you grow up? Those sorts of questions are the things that people are always asking each other. They're really safe questions to ask, and they're usually really easy questions to answer. I call this finding your fun facts. Now, all of these demographic questions have answers. Not all of them are interesting, but if you find the ones that do kind of have interesting answers, you can focus on sort of crafting a bit of a script for yourself so that you can introduce yourself to someone and ask them a question that leads the conversation in a direction where you're really comfortable, but also is interesting for the other person. So, perfect example, when I meet someone for the first time, one of the first things that I ask them is about their family size. So I'll ask the person, oh, did you have brothers and sisters? How big is your family? And they'll say, oh, I have 2 brothers and 1 sister. And then they'll say, what about you? Which leads up to my fun fact. I just have 1 brother, but I still feel like I came from a big family because my dad has 20 brothers and sisters. 20 brothers and sisters! And then we end up going to a very comfortable direction for me, talking about the experience of having a big family and contrasting that with like a normal sized family or a small family. It's very comfortable for me to have that conversation with people. And I have it almost every time I meet someone. And it makes it so easy for me to introduce myself to people and start a conversation off in an easy way. So take some time to think through those basic demographic questions that people always ask when they're meeting someone for the first time, and think about whether you have interesting, unique, uncommon answers to any of those questions. And then those are the ones that you want to ask other people when you're meeting them for the first time. If you'd like some help identifying those common demographic questions that strangers always ask each other, check the link in the description to my free downloadable PDF, How to Talk to Strangers with Confidence. So the big limitation of the fun facts method is that you need to feel confident talking about something pretty specific. And if you don't, that's okay. I have another method for you, and I call it smile, nod, and ask a follow-up. You know what people love more than apple pie and 4-day weekends? talking about themselves. So if you want to have a conversation with a stranger and you want to make sure that that conversation goes well, all you have to do is get them talking about themselves, and they're going to feel like the conversation went great. So in this situation, I pretty much exclusively stick to two questions. What do you do for fun? And what have you watched recently? That pretty much always gets someone started on something that they're excited to talk about. Everyone has some sort of hobby or interest that they really enjoy, that they want to share with others, but that they don't get to talk about very often. And everyone has watched something somewhere recently. So it's a really easy, universally applicable question. And all you have to do is look for details that you can ask follow-up questions about. So if you get someone talking about their hobby and you find that you're really not sure what the follow-up question should be, stick to heroes and hang-ups. So if they're talking about, let's say, cake decorating, and that's a hobby that they're really into, ask them about their heroes. Who do you look up to? Who do you follow? Where do you get inspiration from? And then hang-ups. What are the things that they are struggling with? And what are the things that a beginner would want to know when they're first getting started in that particular hobbies? Those are going to be things where they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of passion. They're following people because they enjoy following them. And people always love teaching a beginner about a hobby that they really enjoy. Hopefully, once you've gotten someone started on those common demographic questions or about their hobbies or about what they've watched recently, the conversation will take off on its own and sort of meander in a really organic way that's comfortable and interesting for both of you. But the truth is, sometimes that doesn't always happen. It can be a little intimidating to figure out how to extricate yourself from a social interaction when you've decided that you're done with it. It's definitely clutch to have a tried and true tactical exit strategy. And this is the one that I use every single time, and it always works. But I'll warn you, it takes a little bit of courage. And I call it, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, because that's what I do. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. And then I make an excuse, and then I leave. So the thing that I like about I'm so sorry to interrupt you is that it is very clear what is happening. You are communicating it unambiguously that you are leaving, and you're not making any commitment to come back, but you are expressing that you're leaving in a way that is respectful. So then the question is, what's your excuse? Well, an easy one that works in most situations is to refill your drink. Now, I personally do not recommend, especially if you are experiencing social anxiety, for you to drink at social events, because that kind of trains you to depend on alcohol to make you feel more comfortable in a social situation. And you want to feel comfortable in a social situation when you're sober, because you're not always going to be in a situation where you need to meet strangers and alcohol is available to you. And also, depending on alcohol for anything is not super healthy. So when I go somewhere, I always make sure that I have some soda water or a Sprite or something with some lime in it. It looks like alcohol, but it's not. And so when it's empty and I decide I'm ready to get out of a conversation, I will say, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I need to refill my drink. And then I leave. I'm not committing to come back, but I am saying I'm leaving to go fill my drink, which is a completely reasonable reason to leave. So bye. There are plenty more excuses that you can pair with I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I've put them in that same PDF that I mentioned earlier, so check the link down in the description for more of them, but I'll give you two more right now. Another one is to go to the bathroom. Totally normal human being thing to do, to go to the bathroom. So if you give someone that I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I have to go to the bathroom, just make sure that you actually go to the bathroom. Even if you don't need to actually use the bathroom, just wash your hands. Your hands are always dirty anyway. Another excuse that goes well with I'm so sorry to interrupt you is I just need to check on something. What the something is really gonna depend on your own situation. I do recommend that you're always honest, because socially awkward people are not good liars. So if you make something up, it's probably going to be obvious to the people around you that you're making something up. So for me, my something is usually my dog. I do have an actual dog. She is very cute. And when she's gone, I usually set up a webcam so that I can check on her if I'm out. And so when I do the I'm so sorry to interrupt you, I just need to check on something, it's usually my dog. So the tools that I've gone over are enough to get you started, but I do recommend that you practice with them. But don't practice willy-nilly like I did with my exposure therapy. Practice with some specificity and intention. Really think about the kinds of interactions that you want to get better at, the kinds of places where you're gonna feel comfortable, the kinds of people that you wanna make connections with, and practice in those arenas. You wanna make sure that you're not wasting your time or putting yourself in a situation that is more difficult than it actually needs to be. If you're anything like I was back at the beginning of this journey, once you show up at that event, no matter how well chosen it was, you're gonna start to feel that fear and anxiety, and you're gonna wanna just leave. So it's really useful to have a goal, a very specific goal that you're going in with. Something like, introduce yourself to 3 people. Maintain a conversation for 5 minutes or more. Give your business card out to 5 people after speaking to them for 5 minutes or more. Those are very specific goals that you can start the event with, and then once you've achieved them, you can give yourself permission to go ahead and leave. It's a great way for you to get practice without overwhelming yourself. Also, you want to make sure that after you leave your event that you spend some time reflecting and thinking about how you did. Don't beat yourself up too much. Make sure to congratulate yourself on the fact that you showed up and that you talked to people and that you had conversations, and think about things that you might want to do differently next time. Are there some questions that you weren't prepared for? Or did you ask a question that didn't seem to land well? Did you make a joke that people thought was really funny? Did you tell a story that people didn't seem super interested in? If you take some time to reflect on those things, you'll be able to take those learnings into the next time that you're going to be social in an unstructured situation. You also want to make sure that you're giving yourself lots of room to make mistakes and improve, and that you're respecting your own boundaries. When you show up at these events, maybe you make a mistake, maybe you make a misstep. That's totally okay. The whole point is to practice so you can improve. But that practice doesn't mean that you need to endure poor treatment from other people. If you're in a situation and you find that people are being rude or mean or cruel, don't feel like you need to stay in that situation just because you've set a goal or just because you feel stuck. Go ahead and use your exit strategy. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, and get away from those people who aren't being kind. Just because you are experiencing some anxiety or some awkwardness doesn't mean that other people can treat you poorly. I'm really glad that I have all of these tools in my tool belt to help support me as I meet people out in the world and develop my personal and professional connections. But the truth is, I don't enjoy unstructured social situations. They're not fun. Just because I'm good at them now doesn't mean that I enjoy them. And I don't want you to feel pressure to enjoy unstructured social situations if you're just naturally introverted. There's nothing wrong with being naturally introverted, but that shouldn't stop you from developing these tools so that you can use them when they're necessary. Having strong, healthy relationships is an important part of having a happy life, and you can't have strong, healthy relationships if you don't go out and meet people for the first time. I hope this video helped you feel a little bit more confident in your next social situation. Make sure to check the link in the description for my free PDF guide to how to talk to strangers with confidence. I'm Phoebe, this is Better with Phoebe, and I hope you have a great day and an even better tomorrow. I'll see you next week.